I'm out of words. I don't know what to say, man. Yeah, thank you. Thanks to the fans for the support, Yeah.
You have the reward of man of the match.
Yeah, thanks to everyone for the votes, Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to AFCON Daily on United and Everything Football. This is episode 13 of AFCON Daily. We just witnessed some very interesting set of games in the last few games of the Africa Cup of Nations being held at the Ivory Coast. And the host nation lost by 4-0 against Equatorial Guinea. You heard me right. 4-0 against Equatorial Guinea. They thought they were out, but well, their neighbors, Ghana, the Black Stars, were cruising with a 2-0 lead, and some way, somehow, in 6 minutes, bottled it, giving Ivory Coast a glimmer of hope of staying in the competition they are hosting. While Ghana's chances has been reduced to a very, very, very marginal. I mean, you'd have to pray that certain teams lose games or certain countries lose games before Ghana can go through with 2 points as part of the third best teams. As it stands, in my head, I think Ghana is coming out of the competition. I mean, the chances of Ghana qualifying is just gone in the air. Country had its destiny in its own hands, went up by 2-0, and then some way, somehow, capitulated when it mattered the most. A late penalty for Mozambique gave them confidence for them to come back to get a consolation goal. Gave them the confidence to push on to get the equalizer with 2 minutes left for the game to come to an end. This is the Black Stars. This is where the Black Stars have been. In 10 games in the Africa Cup of Nations over the last 3 editions, the Black Stars, led by its captain Andre Dede Ayew, have won just 1 game. 1. Yes, you heard me right. They have just won a single game over the last 3 editions of the Africa Cup of Nations. They have won none of their games in the last 2 editions of the Africa Cup of Nations. They crashed out embarrassingly against Comoros in the last Africa Cup of Nations that was held in Cameroon. As it stands, they are crashing out more embarrassingly in the Ivory Coast in this year's Africa Cup of Nations. We are going for a break. When we come back, I'll introduce my guests. Then we'll find out why. What is the problem? We'll be right back. But remember to hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell. Please leave a comment, share with your friends. We'll try and attempt a breakdown of what the problem is with Ghana football. What is the problem? We'll be right back after this. Thank you very much and welcome to AFCON Daily on United and Everything Football. I'm joined by my very good friend who has been with us throughout this AFCON Daily on United and Everything Football. His name is Scott Gillan. He knows so much about Ghana football. He's been with us through and through so far on this journey since we started AFCON Daily. Scott, Ghana has crashed out again. I'm sure this is about the second time we've crashed out of the competition I mean, embarrassingly. As it stands, well, until the other group games end, we can't totally count Ghana out, but it looks very unlikely unless there is a dramatic turn of event for Algeria to lose, for some teams to lose, before Ghana can stand a chance to qualify for the next round of the competition. What happened today, Scott? What really happened today?
Well, I think today's a kind of another culmination of more wasted years. I suspect if you were able to go back and listen to the Twitter space after Ghana lost to Comoros at the 2021 AFCON, you would have probably heard me say exactly the same things that I'm about to say right now. And when you go back and perhaps hear Twitter Spaces, for example, at the end of the Chan or other tournaments, you'd hear pretty much the same stuff. There is no plan. There has not been a plan for, well, arguably since Kwesi Nyantakyi left. Now, that's not me saying that Ghana should go and get him back, to be very, very clear. But there hasn't been a plan since then. And certainly since Curtis Kreku came in, there has certainly not been a plan that looked cohesive and was about, with its end goal in mind, Ghanaian national team football being successful. There may have been plans in place for things to happen. I think you could say that there's been certain plans in place to get players from teams that he and his friends and his colleagues on the executive committees and so on, get their players into national teams. May have been plans for that. There may have been plans, short-term plans, going where the wind blows. You pick this coach, you pick Siki Akonor, you sack Siki Akonor. He said he wants to play possession football. You sack him. You bring in Milo to part of the bus. You sack him. You bring in Otto Addo for 12 months, 9 months, because he says, I want to play possession football and get to the World Cup. He leaves. They bring in Chris Hughton, who wants to part of the bus. No plan in terms of a national style. No plan in terms of coaching continuity. And then this nagging issue of squads, which I sort of touched on when I talked about the players. But it is, since Ghana had a golden generation, 2006 time, Michael Essien, Stephen Appiah, Suleiman Tari, the young Asamoah Gyan, emerging Derek Boateng, John Mensah, Sami Kuffour, etc. That merges into a talented group, some of whom won the Under-20 World Cup in 2009. Others had been successful in Under-17 tournaments. Through to about 2015, Ghana had these sort of maybe successive golden generations, but certainly some very, very good players. Asamoah Gyan being a big difference maker. And since then, what's happened? Not really sure. 2017, they were over the hill, failed to qualify for World Cup. And what's happened since then? Which players have come through? What's the plan been? What are the tactics meant to be? Why have Ghana had so many different managers? Just no plan. There's never been a plan. The FA go where the wind blows. The FA goes where the pressure goes. The only thing that's consistent throughout all this time is that there is not a plan. There's been no squad planning. There's been no succession planning. The AUs are still here. When you look before the squad at the usage of the players in the last few years, there's the Ayew brothers, and then there's a huge gap. There's Daniel Amate, and then there's a gap. And then there's all these young guys who've been in and around the squad for a short amount of time. And then some older dual nationals who they brought in as an emergency because they messed around. They brought in 2 right backs, Kingsley Schindler and Dennis Odoi, because they spent how many squads? 4 or 5 squads picking Philemon Baffle? Mm-hmm. Their local player, their guy. to get him a move to Portugal, and he's now a free agent. We've seen they still don't have a right back. They're still suffering from that decision. They're still suffering from the fact that they mess around in attack. They mess around with, I'd say, somewhere between 3 and 7 or 8 positions in every squad. The excuse in the local media, when you hear people talk about it and you hear people like me criticize it, is it doesn't matter. They're not going to play. It doesn't matter. Those guys don't get on the pitch anyway. Whether you pick some young kid from Belgium or whether you pick this guy from Ghana, they never get on the pitch. But it's not about getting on the pitch then. It's about succession planning for the future. It's about someone like Joseph Pencil missing out on the World Cup and being asked to play a key role in an AFCON. It's about Ransford Jabeur Gerningsdorfer missing out on a World Cup and being asked to play a key role at an AFCON. It's long-term decisions about lack of squad planning, about a lack of succession planning, a lack of planning about plan Bs that leaves you in this situation where you come to an AFCON with your 2 key men, Thomas Partey, Mohamed Kudus, injured, unfit, and your plan B is someone who's played 150 minutes or less than 150 minutes this season, Majida Shimeru. They ask him to play 3 successive 90-minute games, and in a surprise to nobody, he gets injured. He got injured in the last game, and he got injured in this game. And then they don't have another plan. They don't have an alternative. The squad wasn't constructed with that plan in mind. Who's the striker? You've got Antoine Semenyo, who plays on the flank for Bournemouth, but is kind of a striker. Inaki Williams plays on the flank for Bournemouth. Who's the other striker in the squad? Jonathan Soa, who is not a striker. He plays in the Ghana Premier League up front nominally, but he just ran the pitch. He's not a striker. They don't have a striker. They've messed around at that position for a few years as well. Just picking here, there, names, this guy here from the GPL, this guy from the GPL. The only thing that consistently happens is that player gets a transfer and never comes back into the Ghana squad. No plan. Just pick this guy here, pick that guy there. Someone justify it this way, someone justify it that way. No coach planning, no squad planning. Youth football. Who are the youth players coming through? Who's come through in the last few years? Nobody. Fatawu Sahaku's the potential one, but he decided, potentially correctly, to focus on his club career and focus on Leicester instead of playing for Ghana. Because why would any player choose Ghana at the moment? You're someone like Majida Shimeru. You get ignored for months, for years, in fact. You turn up, Ghana ride you flog you like a dead until you're dead, basically. You go off injured, and that's that. How long is he going to be injured for? Who knows? And then all of these problems, no planning, no squad planning, no coach planning, no style of play, so no cohesion, no players who are familiar with one another, playing a different style every few months. You come along, you're a new group. You're a new group at AFCON 2021. They're a new group at the World Cup in 2022. They were a new group at this AFCON in 2023. No planning. No idea what's happening. This squad then, unbalanced. As I touched on, no plan B for Kudus and Partey. 3 sixes. A bunch of centre-backs in the squad. Some of whom can also play 6. No need to have so many 6s when you've got all these options who can also play 6.
Yeah. 3
right-backs, 2 of whom are basically centre-backs. 1 of whom is a converted winger who's lost his explosiveness. 1 left-back who you had to run for all 3 games because you didn't trust the backup. The goalkeeper, surviving on past glories.
Yeah.
He basically hasn't played football since 2021.
Yeah.
When asked about it, pre-tournament, Chris Houston said he's never let Ghana down. He basically hasn't played for Ghana since 2019.
Yeah.
So we're talking about someone who hasn't let Ghana down 4 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, 6 years ago. What's happening? Why are Ghana living on these past glories? The Ayew brothers even. I mean, I can see the value in Jordan Ayew. He's got used to it. He's progressive, he can get the ball at the pitch. But his brother's around still. His brother came off the bench today at half-time. His brother's still in the squad. Jordan Ayew is still there. Daniel Amate seems to have been some issues in the last few days with him potentially. Unclear. But these guys who Ghana just don't move on from people. They've got players They've got misprofiled players. They're picking aging players. They're not picking on merit. And that's the big issue, I think, in squads, is that there's no meritocracy. Yes, there's no, and that's ultimately what then comes into there's no succession planning. There's no plan Bs, because it's just, there are certain names that have to be in. There are certain people from other places that have to be in. And then there's a few guys who are in on merit, and then we try and make it fit. But the coach changes all the time. There's just no consistency, no cohesion. They're missing profiles. They can't change games when the game starts to go against them. They can only go more negative. They can never be more positive. And then today we saw it. They're winning 1-0 against a team that they should be looking to dominate.
Yeah.
They score early. They then cede possession. They drop back. They drop into their 4-4-2 and they let Mozambique have the ball and just attack and attack and attack. And at half time, I said, this is not safe. They need to be more proactive, be more positive, get someone who can threaten more, get Nuama on for Jordan Ayew. Carry, you've had to go to your double pivot because Ashimir has gone off injured. Yeah. You have to be more attacking. You can't just let them come onto you, because Ghana haven't been defensively sound. Their goalkeeper is not sound. You can't just invite these guys into your half. Yeah. What do they do at half time? They take off Joseph Pantsil, the counter-attacking threat. They bring Dundre Ayew on for what? To break a record. I hope he's glad that he's broken a record. And they then give Cape Verde, Mozambique, the ball for the whole second half. They can't even counter-attack anymore. There's no dynamism. There's no threat. They then go up the other end, score from a counter-attack, another penalty, 2 penalties in the game. Couldn't create, but nice to have 2 penalties. And then they went even more defensive. They brought off Dennis Adoif, Aliou Seydou, the right back who's a centre back. All due respect to him, I quite like him, but he's not a right wing back. And they brought Daniel Amati on, I think, for Semenyo.
Yeah.
And went back 5, and then just and I think the big thing that I think with it all is the overriding issue is just complacency and arrogance, and that's the massive thing. There's not a plan. There's not
okay.
Yeah, there's no plan. There's no desire to do things properly because there's complacency and arrogance. And that we saw that today. The microcosm of today in the match was they went 2-0 up and they said, "We don't respect you. You're not going to score. You're not good enough to score against us. We're going to go 5-3-2 without a counter-attacking threat.
Yeah,
but you're not good enough." And they were wrong.
Well,
and in fact, it wasn't good enough for Ghana because they conceded a poor penalty. And they conceded an even worse corner when the goalkeeper, I don't know what he was doing.
I mean, I still can't fathom the way and manner Richard Ofori gave away that corner. It was like fate was playing its way throughout the game against us, because the ball was just going out, guide the ball out. Somehow he had to have a touch. Then the ball goes out for a corner, and then there is an equalizer. It just doesn't make sense. I mean, absolutely nothing makes sense from this game, where we decide to. For those who follow me on the X app, I kept saying that, hey, Mozambique is going to score. Mozambique is going to score because of the way we were set up. We were set up right after scoring to sit back and invite pressure, like you're rightly saying, to allow them attack us. Which coach does this? Which forward-thinking coach does this at a tournament against the supposed weak opposition in the group? You sit back, invite pressure, and allow the team that you are coaching to be attacked. I mean, smacks of everything. I'm just lost for words to use. I'm just trying to hold myself because I don't have to get overly emotional. It's a channel that a lot of people are listening to. A lot of Ghanaians are probably emotional now. Scott, your last words. We don't have enough time. We will get time. We will find time properly to discuss some of these things. But what is the way forward for Ghana?
they have to have a long, hard look and think about how they want to play football. Basically, there was talk of the national sort of style ID document that I'm convinced was basically an empty book with a nice cover that was getting waved around on a stage.
An empty book, yeah.
But that's what they have to think about, because I think there is going to be turnover in coaches. One thing they can do is actually just choose a coach and stick by a coach. That's like something that would be fairly straightforward.
Yeah.
But it has to be the right coach. It has to be a coach that conforms with the identity. And that's why they have to go away and have a long, hard think. Bring some good people in. Someone like Faisal Chibsa to actually, who loves it and wants to lead it and take it in the right direction, who can educate, who can teach, who can lead, who can create a national style that can be pervasive, and then put in place, a talent ID system that is robust, that is not beholden to vested interests, and letting players live off of their old achievements. It focuses on guys who have the potential to be great now and in the future, and not were good or great 5-6 years ago. And for that, I think ultimately what needs to happen is there needs to be less arrogance and less complacency, because that's the pervasive theme for me, is arrogance and complacency, and how that has just gripped, taking Ghanaian football in a grip where everything is going to be okay somehow, and we can just keep doing what we're doing because at the last minute we can do this, or at the last minute we can do that, or someone will do something magical. Yeah. But it's all about process. And at the moment, the arrogance and that complacency has destroyed the processes. And the greed has destroyed the processes. And until someone is able to take a high level view and say, no, we need to grab hold of this again and start controlling these processes, then things are just going to keep drifting.
Right.
And these tournaments are just going to keep coming and going in a flash. Yeah. It's another, I think it was, each time it's been about 8 days. It's been about a week that just an AFCON just comes and goes.
Thank you very much, Scott. It's been a privilege having you with us to just do a quick post-match analysis. We'll be bringing you a lot more. There's a lot more that we'll be bringing you, trying to do a fact-finding of how come Ghana has crashed out. The other games will be coming up tomorrow. We'll be bringing you post-match analysis of all of the other games that will be coming. This is how we end today's edition of AFCON Daily on United and Everything Football. We are grateful for your time. Thank you very much, Scott. Thank you for subscribing and hitting the notification bell. Please subscribe. It's so important to us. We appreciate your time. Please have a great time. See you tomorrow.